Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have something really exciting to check out, something that I personally have been very much so anticipating. We have Cannibal Corpse, the Zombie T-Rex from Rebor, and as you can see, we have both the plain and jungle variant. So basically, what these are Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurs, but in zombie form. And honestly, I mean, does it get crazier and cooler than that? I don't think so. And I was really excited about the release of these because, as per usual, when it comes to Rebor, they're always thinking outside the box, always giving us stuff that's very different from what most other people release, and then, of course, your usual species in between. But this is definitely one of the most, I would say, out there releases, but exactly the company I would expect to see it come from. So, very excited to check these out. And another thing to keep in mind, and I do want to state this early on in the review, just in case you do not know, Rebor has stated that this is the only run of this figure they are going to release because it was so costly and complicated to make and paint, because there's just so much to it, that they will not be releasing any more of this, or at least that was the plan the last time I had heard. So if you were on the fence about getting this, hopefully this review will help you decide and you can place your order right away, because you don't want to miss out on this. Again, if you don't order it the first time around, you're out of luck, and I believe there was only a limited quantity of this on Happy Hen Toys, which is where I purchased mine. That's a site that I don't talk about nearly enough, honestly. It is a great website, but I did acquire these through Happy Hen Toys, so if you are interested, that's where I would recommend going to grab them right away before they sell out. But you can see, as far as the box art goes, first of all, we have the female variant here. Again, the plain variant. You've got a really cool image there on the front of the packaging. Not really anything else going on until you turn it around. Again, pretty much the usual when it comes to Rebor. But on the back, you can see you basically have the green variant, so the male variant here on the back again, and then same thing for the other one. You're going to have the female variant on the back of the male variant box. So let's pop these open and check them out. So here is the green version, the male version, but as you can see, I am having some trouble with this one balancing. But what's interesting is they actually give you a stand now with the figures so that you can prop them up, and that's not something that Rebor used to do, so I don't know if maybe they had discovered the potential balancing issue with this figure earlier on and then just included it because of that, or if they included the stand in case this were to happen. I don't know, but it was definitely a good choice on their part to include it, because clearly I am having some issues with mine balancing out currently. So let's go ahead and move that one back a little bit. But on top of that, you also get a severed arm for your T-Rex to eat. And then we also have the female variant, which was just laying over here. And that one as well doesn't seem like it's going to stand for me. So I guess I'm going to have to break out the stand for that one as well. And we'll just slide this under our female version of the T-Rex as well, and that one as well, again, comes with a severed arm. But there is something really cool about those arms that I just noticed that I didn't notice prior in the prototype images or anything. But they do look incredibly, incredibly cool. Like, when it comes to a zombie T-Rex, I don't think it could get cooler than what I'm seeing right here. These are both phenomenal looking as far as, like, all of the injuries, which there are a whole lot. I would hate to have been the person that had to sculpt this out because it had to take forever. But again, the one thing that I can say looking at them right out of the gate is the female looks really nice. Maybe not perfectly, you know, as far as the tones of color to a Jurassic Park T-Rex, but they got like the basic design, and it does look nice as far as the application of the paint. Just the tones maybe seem a little off. But the male version is a little generic as far as the way that it's painted, like moving along the back, the striping effect and the lack of alternate coloration up there is just slightly generic compared to what I'm used to. But if you look at this as maybe, you know, being some other form of a Jurassic Park T-Rex that apparently has become zombified, and it's not exactly the same version that we've seen on screen, then maybe it could have that alternate color where it just has like a yellow striping or like a light green striping moving along the back, and it doesn't have the darker tones moving along the back. I don't know. Either way, you can see they both look incredibly, incredibly cool. So let's jump to a closer look and we'll check them both out from there. So we'll begin with the female variant, and you can see, again, it looks absolutely incredible when you look at it here in the face. They, of course, have captured the likeness of the Jurassic Park T-Rex pretty nicely. Like, the overall head sculpt and everything looks good. Honestly, I think it looks maybe even better than their older JP T-Rex as far as the head sculpt goes. But obviously, also, you can see that we have all sorts of disgusting injuries and stuff here on the face for the T-Rex, and you can see it's all painted up beautifully with blood and guts all over the place. We've got the, like, area here in the palate just completely torn open. You have rips and tears all throughout the face, up here near the eye, moving along the jawline. The gums are showing here for the T-Rex. There is honestly so much as far as the injuries go, it would be pretty impossible to point out each and every one. The eye is also incredibly cool looking. Look at that paintwork for the eye. That stands out to me so much. It's got a beautiful gloss coat and just, again, super precise, really nice paintwork in there, giving it for sure a demented and possessed sort of look. The overall detailing of the skin for the T-Rex as well looks fantastic. Again, they really captured the look of the JP Rex, even in the skin texture, and they've also applied some really nice paint. You can see there's like a dark wash, it looks like, potentially applied to the figure. And we have the striping here moving along the top, very nice and subtly applied with an airbrush, very smoothly applied. And then as you look over here on the other side, this side of the face somehow is even worse off than the first side as far as the injuries go. Like, you can see the entire snout, including the nostrils here in the skull, are pretty much showing here on the front. Again, all of the bloody areas are painted out with a nice reddish tone, actually varying reddish tones, and then given a gloss coat so it shines really nicely. You can also see the eye again looks disgustingly awesome over here as well. Like I said, even more injuries, I would say, on this side of the Rex. Another thing that is really cool is you do have an articulated jaw, and you can actually keep going as far as how wide you want it to open. So it does open pretty wide, but you can see how the skin is stretching here on the inside of the mouth. You can also see the paintwork again applied. Looks like they've applied like dark washes and everything, as far as like dark reddish washes and stuff in there. All of the teeth are again painted with the same like reddish bloody tones that we have through the course of the entire figure. When you look at it from the front, like, doesn't get much more intimidating as far as a visual goes than that, but you can see the tongue on the inside of the mouth is, I mean, just absolutely gross looking. Like, it looks so rough in there. And same thing again when you move it around and take a look at the inside of the mouth on the upper side. We let the light creep in there. It looks insane on the inside of the mouth even of this Rex, and the inside of the mouth as well sports a nice gloss coat to help everything shine and look very bloody. And I will say that jaw does work really nicely. Like, it definitely sits pretty much wherever I put it. But as you move down through the course of the neck of the T-Rex, again, the skin texture continues to look really nice. The sculpt of this Rex is fantastic. Even for just being a JP Rex, it would have been a great version. But you can see we continue to have the striping effect moving along the back of the neck, and then the brownish tones, as well as a lighter tone here. Down on the underside, you can see the dark wash highlighting all of the detail as well, really quite nicely. And then again, some variation of color here and there. You can even see like brownish tones, like darker browns that have shown up here on the arms and stuff. We continue to have all sorts of injuries moving down through the course of the T-Rex. It even looks like bite marks and stuff right here in the neck. Maybe that was from another infected dinosaur, and that's how this one became infected. We can see the throat is ripped out here and hanging out of the skin, which looks disgustingly awesome. You can also see one thing that's really cool here. The shoulder blade is actually sticking out right here and up here on the top. It's actually sticking out and protruding from the skin, which is a really nice little touch right there. Another thing that is pretty cool is you do actually have articulated arms for the figure. You can move the arms forward and back. You can actually go all the way almost around until it hits the stomach right there, but that looks really neat, again, to have the ability to pose it with its arms out or have its arms, you know, back in a more natural position, even though it's definitely not a naturalistic looking dinosaur. But we can see if we bring the arm back out, you've got the fingers sculpted nicely, the nails have a nice genuine sharp look to them, and they are painted with a nice glossy black. As you move back into the stomach region, you can see some more tears here in the stomach. You can see the rib cage. The dinosaur looks honestly like it's a little bit starved, but at the same time does have some beefiness to it, but like the ribs are like really kind of sticking out there, looking kind of starved. Again, all sorts of injuries, and you can even see right here, it looks like you actually see one of the ribs. Yeah, definitely, because you can see it lining up right there. So you can see one of the ribs, and they they've actually painted it out where you can distinguish that differently from the rest of the figure right there. So that is really cool. Same deal with the shoulder blade. It's painted with a different color so that it stands out a little more, which is a really nice touch. On the underside of the T-Rex, we can see the intestines hanging out and everything down here, and they've also painted this stuff with different tones. Like the intestines have a different shade of color compared to the other intestines up there, and then compared to the, you know, muscle and blood and guts and stuff that you see sticking out everywhere else. So that's really cool. Again, very small minor touches like that always impress me, showing you that Rebor really wanted to go all out with this release. If you move up here into the back, you can see, again, following along the spinal column, the dinosaur continues to have injuries all over the place. You can actually see some of the vertebrae sticking out of the back right there. We can also see the hip bone right there, again, also protruding from the skin a little bit. And then you have all sorts of tears and rips moving down through the course of the leg. You can really see the muscle right there, like stretching, and very impressive when it comes to that very fine detail in that area. Rebor really, again, just absolutely blowing my mind as far as the amount of time and effort put into the sculpt of this figure. You can see a really obvious seam, though, as you move down here in the knee. The knee is connected in a way where they didn't really, you know, hide the seam at all. It's super obvious. But you can see, again, you have like a striping effect moving down the front of the leg. You continue to see that down into this area of the shin. You can actually see the shin bone right there as well, again, sticking through that little ripped open area of the leg. And then as you move down, you have even more injuries and rips and tears here on the foot. And as you move down, you can see, as you lead out toward the nails, like the toes are just missing skin and stuff. So unbelievably gross in the best way possible. And the nails, again, have a nice glossy look to them, which looks really cool. And yes, the dew claws are painted. They did not miss that, which is nice. Rebor doesn't usually ever miss that kind of stuff. But as you move out, the tail was separate on the inside of the packaging. But as you can see, once it's applied, it's not super obvious. You can see a slight seam there as I move it, and I've pushed it in a few times. And it doesn't make the seam completely disappear, but I don't think it stands out in any way, shape, or form. And again, that's pretty common. For Rebor releases, they often have that sort of style of tail, but what's cool about it is because that has that style of tail, you do have a rubber bendable wire tail, so it gives you a little bit more articulation, as we now have, again, an articulated jaw, articulated arms, and the tail. But as you can see, we've got more injuries. Again, you can see the vertebrae and stuff up here in the back sticking out, all sorts of disgustingness up there and on the underside, looking insanely, insanely awesome. You see more of it as you lead out here closer toward the tip of the tail, and you also continue to see that striping effect moving along. And then as we turn the Rex around and we take a look at the other side, you can see that the throat is torn out a little more over here. You do have some more puncture wounds up here as you move up into the side of the neck. And then again, more skin just kind of decaying and rotting away on the T-Rex. As you move through, you can see the vertebrae up here as well. And then as you move down, you've got a pretty good shot of the rib cage on this side, actually, without the skin. You can see this side has completely deteriorated to the point where the ribs are sticking out of the T-Rex. And again, we do have the articulated arm just like we had on the other side. You've got a pretty massive wound up there, a pretty massive area of decay. I don't know how you want to term it, but the intestines are definitely a lot more visible up here. And I love the fact that even on the insides of the legs, like the smaller areas you don't expect people to see quite as much, they still went and put so much time and effort into sculpting out all of these disgusting areas of injuries and blood and guts throughout all of that, even on the back of the calf right there. Same deal for this leg, which this leg looks phenomenal over here, because not only can you see all of that, like you see like the muscles and stuff, you can also see the bones there in the leg on this side, something you didn't really see on the other side. I love this figure because as you move through it, it becomes more shocking the further into the figure you get, which is really cool. Like if you start out on what I would perceive as the more dominant side and then move over to this side, as things go on, as time goes on, it just becomes more and more disgusting, which is awesome. And again, another thing that I really like on this side specifically is right here in the leg, where you can see all of the muscle and everything showing in the thigh. The skin looks so deteriorated and gross, and like it's just kind of hanging off of the sculpt. Like it's not like they just took the regular skin of the T-Rex and then sculpted out all of these areas where it's injured. Like the skin looks saggy and like it's literally just falling off of the T-Rex. Insane, insane detail. And I can see why Rebor only wants to do this with one run, because I can't imagine how long it had to have taken to paint out all of these different areas, especially as perfectly and precisely as they have. But as you move down into the foot, you again see all of the injuries and stuff down here. I don't even know if I should be calling them injuries, just all of the rot on the T-Rex down here as well. You can even see part of the bone of the foot right there. And then as you move out into the tail, again, same thing that we saw pretty much on the other side, but again, maybe a little more deteriorated and a little more disgusting over on this side. But that is honestly one of the coolest Rebor figures that they have made yet. This thing is as epic as it honestly gets. And for that figure, you actually get this hand. Now you can see the hand is sculpted and painted really nicely. Again, even for the skin textured areas, they did a very good job of painting this out to make it look quite nice and realistic. And the detailing again is really crisp. You can see as you move through, the skin texture looks really good. Obviously, we've got some injuries to this arm. Of course, the most obvious injury is the fact that it's been completely ripped off and removed from the original owner of the arm, but you can see the bones sticking out. Again, the bones have a different tone of color and a nice wash, as well as a nice gloss coat added to it to make it look extraordinarily disgusting. But what's cool about this is if you recognize this arm, this looks to me to be the arm of the Indominus Rex. Now, I don't know for sure if that's been confirmed by Rebor, but that very clearly to me is the Indominus Rex arm. So we know what, I guess, happened to the Indominus Rex after the Mosasaurus was done with it. I guess the T-Rex got a hold of it after it turned into a zombie. Then we've got the male variant. Now, of course, the coloration is going to be the only real difference on this one compared to the other one. I don't think that they've sculpted this one out differently, like it doesn't have the male look over the female look. It is the same sculpt, it seems, just different paintwork. So obviously one of the most obvious differences would be the fact that we have the greenish tones for the male, and you can see you've got the dark greens and lighter greens all throughout the face. And again, even down here on the lower jaw, you also have the lighter tone for the lower jaw. You can see a very nice, perfectly applied dark wash highlighting all of the scale detail on the underside here on the lower jaw and stuff. It looks great. The colors look maybe like they're slightly different here on this one compared to the initial version, maybe just a little bit different as far as the tones of color go. I don't know which one I would say I prefer, but I do like the colors of both as far as all of the injuries. But again, you're going to find that all of the injuries and disgusting areas of this T-Rex are the same, of course, because again, the sculpt is the same. But obviously we have an articulated jaw just like we had on the other one. The eyes are painted the same similar way with, again, a usage of like a white and then red to just make it look really bloody and completely possessed. I do have a few like areas of damage on mine because you can see a little scuff of paint there. I did notice it right there. There's another little scuff. I'll have to touch that up and see if I can, you know, completely make those disappear once I'm done with the review, but I did want to point that out. But as you can see, the inside of the mouth again looks pretty much the same on this one as it did on the original version that we had taken a look at, the female version. As you move back, again, the same injuries. Looks like maybe we have lighter tones that have been applied to a lot of the injuries, and maybe the wash looks like, I don't know, maybe it was a little more watered down, because I just feel like I could see the lighter tones a little bit better on this one. Like the injuries aren't quite as dark, or again, I keep calling them injuries. Maybe the decaying areas aren't quite as dark. You could see like more kind of like disgusting skin stretching and stuff, I feel like, on the actual muscle and everything of this one. The ribs are painted out in a darker way on this one as well, but you can see as you move down, you've got the intestines again hanging here from the underside of the Rex. We continue to have the light tone moving along the underside, of course. A really quite smooth transition, though, as you move back up. But the one thing I was stating earlier about this, and it was the generic look of the one area of paint. Like, for the most part, I think the body actually looks great as far as the paintwork goes. It's just when you come up here, you have this, like, super generic looking striping that doesn't really even look all that natural moving along the back. I would say that's probably the only downside for this figure. Technically, the Rex should have like a darker tone following along the upper part, with this kind of lighter greenish yellow tone showing up in between, basically the way it is, maybe a little bit thicker, but for some reason it doesn't really have it. I mean, I guess you can kind of see like a darker tone, but it's not as obvious as it should be, and that striping just looks slightly generic to me. But outside of that, I think like when you move down to the side, the variation of color, the transitions, everything does look really, really good on the figure. Again, we do have the articulated arms on this one, just like we had on the other one, and the same deal with the tail. As you move out, you do have the wire tail, so you can pose and articulate the tail however you would like. the seams are actually not nearly as obvious on this one when it comes to the legs. The female had really obvious seams on the legs. This one, I think, actually hides it a little better, so you don't notice those seams in the knees, not even nearly as much, honestly. I would say they're almost not even noticeable at all. But you can see the opposing side again. Looks exactly as you would expect it. You can see the shoulder blade and everything sticking out there. Again, all of the injuries, the shin sticking out over there on the opposing leg. You even have like some reddish browns for the undersides of the feet of the T-Rex as well. So overall, both of these are honestly fantastic, and when it comes to a zombie T-Rex, I don't think it gets any better than those. And then, of course, we also have the extra, which is the arm that this T-Rex is eating. Now, when you see this, I think you can instantly tell what we're looking at here. This would be the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. So, again, Rebor giving us really cool little things included here that you may not have noticed. I mean, I definitely didn't notice that when it comes to the original prototype images, and I thought it was just so cool when I pulled it out and realized one arm was the Indominus Rex, one arm is the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3, and you can even see they've applied variation of color to the underside of the hands, like the palms of the hands, and again, all of the injuries, bones sticking out in the same similar fashion as to what we had seen on the Indominus arm. The nails are painted with a nice black as well. Again, a really cool addition to a phenomenal Rebor release. The only problem I'm still having with these guys is the fact that I cannot get them to stand. I don't know if maybe I tried the hot water, cold water trick, if I could bend one of the legs, most likely this one, just like the toe down a little bit to help balance it out, because that is the problem. It's kind of top heavy toward the dinosaur's left and continues to kind of fall in that direction. But again, we're just going to have to use the stand that we have here to prop our Rex up. There we go. And now we can move the camera back a little bit and get a nice measurement for the T-Rex. So for a length, you are looking at right around 16 inches, almost like on the dot, or about 40.5, heading toward 41 centimeters, but not quite. And then for a height, the highest point would be the back of the neck, about 5.25 inches, or around just a hair under about 13.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being next to our Rebor Zombie Rex, and you can see it's pretty much the size range you would expect it to be. If you are familiar with the Rebor Tyrannosaurs, you know that they're usually fairly large, and you definitely have that going on here with this zombie version. But when it comes to a comparison with the older Rebor Killer Queen, obviously this is the male and male variant next to each other, version of the T-Rex, you can see that the newer Zombie Rex might be slightly smaller as far as like body mass, but that makes sense if we have the look of like a starving sort of version of a Jurassic Park T-Rex. So I think they actually, you know, matched these up fairly accurately to the way they should look next to each other. But you can also see, just in general, I think, a nice improvement on Rebor's quality, especially when it comes to like the paintwork of the eyes. When you look at the paintwork of the eyes of the old Rex and the fact that it was pretty sloppy in comparison to the paintwork of the eyes of this new Rex, even though there's not a whole lot going on in there, but again, they just look so much more high quality now on the newer Rebor releases. And then just in case you wanted a comparison next to the Nanmu T-Rex, you can see the Rebor version here is a little bit smaller than your standard Nanmu Tyrannosaurus. And when it comes to this Rex and Rebor as a whole, and being able to compare it with something else that is super cool from Rebor, what better way to display this Rex than with the also male Jurassic Park style Rex here, but it's the deceased version that Rebor had released. That would be a really cool way to go when it comes to displaying this T-Rex, or even the female version, again, kind of standing over this dead Rex like it recently has killed it and is now enjoying its meal. And just because we have the arm of an Indominus Rex included with this release with the female version, but here is the Zombie Rex next to the Nanmu Indominus Rex in case you wanted to see how those sized up next to each other. And then same deal for the Nanmu Spinosaurus. You can see what it looks like in comparison to this Rebor Rex, because we also have a severed Spinosaurus hand, and unfortunately Rebor has not given us any versions of these dinosaurs like the Jurassic Park 3 Spino or the Jurassic World Indominus so far. I don't know if they ever will, but you know, until then, we have to have these placeholders of the Nanmu figures standing next to the Rebor versions of the Zombie Rex, and you can see again roughly what they size up next to each other. The spinal obviously is a bit larger, but would still look really cool in a diorama with these figures. So these brand new Rebor Cannibal Corpse Zombie T-Rex models are both awesome, like they really are. When it comes to any sort of downside for these figures, there's very little when it comes to these because they both look so insanely impressive. And even with the inability of them standing, like the fact that they obviously have balancing issues, the fact that Rebor went ahead and included a stand ahead of time was really smart on their part, so I definitely appreciate that fact. But even the fact that, like I said, that, you know, that they don't stand too well, or really at all, it doesn't take away from the fact that overall they are such an insanely impressive visual that I pretty much can look right past the balancing issues and still just appreciate these figures for what they are, which is just absolutely over-the-top, insane Jurassic Park style zombie T-Rex. And I think, again, the sculpts are really nice. When it comes to a JP style T-Rex, they did a very good job of capturing the likeness, at least as far as like a female version, and then replicating the female sculpt for a male paint job. But they did a really good job on the overall sculpt of the T-Rex and the fine detail. And then you factor in the fact that you have so much as far as like deteriorating body, like skin, and just areas of the dinosaurs like ribs showing, and the intestines hanging out, and the shin bones, and the toe bones, and the muscles, and there's just so much going on when it comes to the zombie aspect of this T-Rex that it is mind-blowing. And like I said earlier, Rebor has stated that they're only doing one run because this figure was such a complicated one to create, and I honestly get that, you know, totally makes sense. And the fact that this Rex took, honestly, a little bit to get out kind of shows you the complications that Rebor had getting this one made, as it seems to have been delayed a little bit, or at least it feels that way to me, because it did take quite some time to actually get released. Felt like a little longer than your standard Rebor release usually does. But overall, the paint apps of both, again, look really nice. The only slight complaint I have as far as the paint apps go would be on the male version and the striping moving down along the back. That's really about it. I think Rebor absolutely nailed the paint apps of their deceased male Rex, but I think in this one, they were more so focused on the blood and guts side of the Rex, that they didn't perfectly capture that striping and the tones of color you would see on the back of the Rex, but they did a pretty good job. You know, it's not bad, it's just not as good as the previous attempt was. But when you look past that and you actually move into the blood and guts areas of these T-Rex figures, it is unreal and absolutely one of the most incredible things I think I've ever had the pleasure of seeing in person. Like just the sheer amount of detail and time it must have taken to paint these out as perfectly and precisely as they have. It's just crazy. And again, like I said, just going back to the fact that they're only having one run of these makes total sense, because it must take so long, so much longer than any usual Rebor release to get these things painted up and put out onto the market. But you take all of that and add in the fact that you have the really cool little hands that are included for the meals of our Tyrannosaurs, and the fact that you have an Indominus hand and a Spinosaurus hand, and you have probably one of the coolest things ever. So Rebor absolutely needs to be given a round of applause, I think, for these releases, even though they have some small issues and one fairly serious issue when it comes to the standing aspect. These still are two insanely cool figures that I highly recommend anybody interested in grabbing right away. You definitely don't want to miss out on these things. So if you do want to grab these, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine, again on Happy Hen Toys. So make sure you check that link. Go grab these if you want them, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.